5.1 points. That's sentiment among businesses remaining stable in January compared to December. The SABC Business Confidence Index was almost unchanged at 95.1 points compared to 95.2 the previous month. Now, in January, the main positive month-on-month effects were caused by increased real retail sales, the increased real value of building plans passed, and the stronger rand exchange rate. Higher share prices on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange also contributed positively to the BCI in January compared to December. Merchandise import and export volumes and new vehicle sales had notable negative month-on-month effects on the BCI in January compared to January of last year. The BCI is 4.6 index points down. 9 of the 13 sub-indices of the BCI were worse off in January 2019 than in January 2018. SABC says the high level recorded in January last year was to a large extent based on expectations for better business prospects following on new leadership of the ruling party, the governing party rather. The BCI continued to level out and move sluggishly during 2018 as there was little real progress in economic performance with recessionary conditions experienced in the first half of last year. Francis.
And Zinga, let's take a look at some company news now. Major companies in the telecoms sector have struggled, particularly over the last 10 months. Vodacom's share price has taken a dive since the Please Call Me saga, while MTN is still reeling from that tax debacle in Nigeria.
Vodacom and MTN. Of keen interest here because it was quite interesting to take a look at how things have fared for the two companies. Now, Vodacom has suffered around 22% drop over the last 10 months alone, and that is based on a few issues happening right at the top there, and that was early in May last year. Regulation to that out of bundle data changes happened on that front, and that really meant that consumers would have to opt into an out of bundle rate as opposed to just systematically having that come to the fore. And that take place this year, and that was a massive fall for the company, as you could tell there, because they seem to be the largest ones at risk there. And then I want to take you right through to earlier on this year, and particularly late in January, early February. That was that Please Call Me saga heating up quite consistently there, with the share price falling from around 130 right below to around 116 at present rand for a single share. In that time span, around 22% lost for Vodacom there. MTN, a similar issue, but facing its own matters, right? Seeing a big fine come to the fore there from Nigerian authorities of around $8.1 billion US, and of course another tax incurrence there for them as well of around $2 billion US there. That making the share price fall, a calamitous fall on that front as well. Although that fine was then reduced at some stage, but look at that share price, only going up ever so marginally, so not much to write home about at that time when things go down. That happened to go down around 24% in the same time span. So the two shares themselves continue to struggle and big woes for them. But question is, can they get themselves higher? Can they continue to grow perhaps? And are they still great businesses? MTN saying that despite Nigeria, they will manage to see their earnings go up at least 20%. That is massive. That is absolutely massive. So let's talk about this now. And we're joined, of course, from the JSE by Michael Traherne, who is portfolio manager at Vestact Asset Management. Michael, thank you so much for the time. But as you can tell, those two stocks, big falls over the last 10 months. But it seems that MTN may still be a good business case despite Nigeria.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots going on, Arabile. Obviously, operating in Nigeria, operating in Iran, operating in South Africa, and then they're the biggest operator in the rest of Africa. So what you would consider very high-risk business given where it operates. They did come out with a trading statement, I think it was on Monday, saying that they expect their profits to be 20% higher than they were last year this time. Even though that number sounds big, it's coming off a fairly low base because of all the issues that they've had in Nigeria and the fines related to that.
Yeah. Does it make it a good business case, though, long term, considering the two factors you've just mentioned, from a low base, and also that structurally they still operate in what might be risky, but still, in terms of mobile connectivity, low entrenched areas?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. They've got a very, very big base with over 200 million customers. It depends what you think happens with data going forward. One of the cases is that you say African governments have missed the fixed line internet revolution, and they've gone straight to mobile internet. And if that's the case, MTN's prime position to take advantage of those customers. The question remains, though, can they monetize all those customers? Will the amount of data used increase quicker than the price that data comes down? And I think that's one of the unknowns at the moment, and that's the reason that both MTN and Vodacom are trading at these lower levels. It's because investors aren't convinced that they can swap people over to data quicker than data prices can fall.
Yeah, and Vodacom facing its own issues then. The Please Call Me saga continues to be one for them, and that of late has certainly hurt that market value. Now the share edging to around 200 billion with regards to that market value as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that yes, the Please Call Me's put a negative spotlight onto MTN. But if you have a look at that price fall, it was similar in time to when they released their trading statement, which very much disappointed the market, showing only very small top-line growth. Data growth or data revenue only growing by 2%. So even though they're saying a lot more data, the revenue only increases by 2%. So overall, the market's quite disappointed, and that was coinciding with the negativity around the Please Call Me. And as you know, sentiment drives share prices, and in this case, Vodacom's got negative sentiment, and this cloud will probably hang over it for a while.
Yeah. Would you get in at these levels on either of the two?
Yeah, I think it's a very promising, both the sectors. I think Vodacom's slightly less risky than MTN. So if you want something more risky, then maybe MTN. Looking at Vodacom, it's less risky. I think it's got a small position to play in your portfolio. They're generally higher dividend payers, which is nice to have. And I think you're betting on the future of internet in Africa. So that's what I'd be betting on.
Yeah.
What does concern me, though, is the political risk on the African continent in general, is particularly around data, and that's going to always impact the share price.
Let's turn our attention to today's movement, 0.8% to the good. That's a positive shift to today's market picture as well, but there is weakness in South Africa's currency, 13.47 against that US dollar, and that is despite the State of the Union by Donald Trump not necessarily moving the needle too much there.
Yes, I think that it's worth mentioning that most of Asian markets are closed at the moment for their Chinese New Year this week. And we get quite a bit of direction from what happens in Hong Kong around what Tencent's price is doing. So that hasn't moved for a week. So it's good to see our market trending positively on lack of much news and without any direction from Tencent. I just think it shows globally there's this risk-on attitude where they're saying, well, the Fed isn't going to raise interest rates anytime soon. A very strong economic data coming out of the US. This morning we had business confidence coming out of South Africa that was just a smidgen lower than it was previously. But just in general showing that business confidence is in wait-and-see mode. A very big catalyst for South Africa will be what happens with our elections, what certainty do we get, and what happens with the land. Even though our president was speaking at the mining Indaba yesterday saying, don't worry, investors are still going to worry until changes to legislation have been made and have been signed.
Tomorrow evening, that State of the Nation address as well locally, that becomes a big focal point. Your hopes for that one?
Yeah, look, I'd like him to open his sona with listing all the people that he plans to put behind bars. I think that'll send a good message globally. But I think what investors will be looking at is what does he say around Eskom, what's going to happen there, what happens with SAA, what happens with SARS, what is the focus for 2019? Can you give too much specifics just before an election? But the big thing will be SOEs, and like from the mining in Indaba earlier this week, mining companies saying they need certainty around Eskom, and I expect that to be quite a big chunk of his speech tomorrow night.